I have one funny a funny voice tidbit for you.
Please.
Ron Rubin, who is the voice of Morph, he tells a funny story that they all go in for their first day, and this is a 13-episode gig for these folks, and this is like, yay, this is going to be great.
A lot of money.
A lot of money, or a little bit, but money, and gets to the end of the first two. Wait, I'm killed? Wait, what?
I'm killed in episode 2?
But this is a cartoon. What do you mean I'm killed?
Did you grow up in Canada? Were you alive in the 90s? Did you love YTV? Yeah, you did. By the way that Morph's death played out, did you actually have to soften it up, or was that your original take? Like,
the only thing that we were given was make sure it happens off screen.
Okay.
And it kind of made it more intense because
I think so.
He gets blasted, and you see the expressions of the faces of the X-Men sensing that he's been killed, and it almost makes it creepier.
Yeah.
But that was the way we wanted to do it. They didn't make us. That's the only thing they asked.
Morph, I don't sense anything.
And then the truth was he was supposed to stay dead.
He was supposed to stay dead. It was a real killing. It was
okay.
Fought for it. That's why it felt so much like that. It wasn't supposed to be a pretend or a trick or anything. And then what happened was the show played about 6 weeks into the run when it was become this big hit. They did a
focus group
with a bunch of kids, and they had a couple hundred kids in and said, "Well, who's your favorite character?" And Morph won by a landslide.
The growing menace of mutant violence.
My fellow Americans, I am an idiot.
So we get a call from the network as we're writing out season 2. And they said, guys, we know you fought really hard for Morph to be dead, but we have a problem. And it's that the kids love him. You made him too lovable.
That's the thing. You guys set him up. We saw Wolverine grieve. We saw everybody grieve. We didn't see much of him, but he was beloved by all the X-Men.
Yeah. So they said, can you find a way to, and I almost broke the phone. I was really mad.
Even Wolverine's Jeep sounds angry.
We took a step back, said, okay, well, then let's do some cool, strange, weird stuff with him. And so we did, but he was supposed to be dead.
You want to take me back? Why? So we can go bowling? Shoot some hoops?
Or maybe it's love you're missing. When I'm with you, all I can think about is how much I'm in love with Cyclops.
Well, it's amazing that, considering you didn't hear about X-Men prior to this show, the amount of empathy that you both written into these characters. I mean, I was talking to Cal before, and I'm like, Morph and Jean did something very important to that character. In the first episode, he could have been a one-note badass that's just like, I go where I want to go. But then with the loss of Morph, you see this anger and pain come out of him that without Morph would not have come to that.
Oh, cowards!
Wolverine!
Tell Cyclops I made him a convertible.
And when Jean comes to comfort him when he's hurt, he just looks at her and goes, Jean. And just by saying Jean, he can say 50 words that I love you and I can't be with you and you're with someone else, but you can all say that in one word.
I've gotta go. Cyclops is waiting for me.
So am I.
And that's the brilliance of a Clint Eastwood performance, let's say.
Right.
Yeah.
That's exactly
thank
what.
You for that. That's well put, and thank you for that.
Yeah, and we wanted to show what it's kind of like classic tragedy. We're trying to get close to that, where it's, what makes you special and spectacular also brings you grief and struggle, and we can't have these guys just shooting up the bad guys and smiling and high-fiving and waiting for the next fight. It just we wanted to show the toll it takes to be a hero, and it meant a lot to all of us to have that in there.
Was there any storylines that you did have to soften up because the network piped in and said, you guys are going a little too much with this?
You know what? I'm going to jump in on this one. There was an episode written by our friend Len Yulee that introduced the character Nightcrawler called Nightcrawler.
Yeah.
And in that episode, it is a serious head-on examination of religion, specifically Christianity. It uses the word God. It uses religious words. It has the religious symbolism. It is about one man's faith. And again, I'm hearing you discuss this one. I'm going, good luck getting that past anybody.
Don't tell me about God. What kind of God would let men do this to me?
Our ability to understand God's purpose is limited. But we take comfort in the fact that his love is limitless.
We got to play it. We can't tiptoe around that.
Yeah.
And so there were some really detailed things about what we couldn't show about certain religious images in the monastery. And at first, they didn't want us to burn the monastery. They didn't want us to do a lot of things, and we pushed back really hard on that. There were a couple of things that went on. There was some massive fight we had that pretty much burned down a city. I don't forget who it was with, but with Juggernaut or Apocalypse, somebody, and we turned it in the week that the LA riots had happened.
Oh yeah.
And we got a note back saying, guys, I know these are superheroes and supervillains, but you really need to pull back on this. Yeah. The other weird thing, this is very from left field, but when we were setting up the second season, I don't know if you remember the first season, it looks Scott proposes to Jean on the beach, and it looks like they're going to get married and live happily ever after. And when we were going to have it, we thought we'd stretch it that they're married in the first episode of the second season, and she spends 4 or 5 episodes, like 7 months pregnant, running around fighting people, and she has a double mutant child.
Which would have been so cool.
Which we'd written out in the stories, and we got notes back from everybody saying, "No, wait a minute. It's one thing to kill somebody. It's another thing to have this woman running around with a 7-month baby bump in spandex fighting supervillains." So we pulled back from that, and that's why we put Sinister in there. We put that at the very end. We retrofitted that to make it a false wedding, because we set all the stuff up with them getting married and moving up. So no, that was something we pulled back because of pregnancy. But that's about the only thing I can think of.
Is there a particular episode or season or arc that comes to mind that actually still emotionally moves you to this day?
Well, I helped come up with a story for what became Beauty and the Beast, the one in season 2 through 4, where Beast falls in love with a blind girl. And
amazing. I watched it yesterday. It's amazing. Yeah.
And then the idea that no, she gets her sight back. They can, and oh my God, they can be in love. But the bigger, uglier issue is the Friends of Humanity stuff, and that played out against that.
Get her out of here quickly.
Hank, where are you going? I don't want you hurt.
Mutants!
Our friend Stephanie Matheson wrote the script on that, and that one that just breaks my heart. And speaking with Larry Houston, later in the series, there's an episode where Hank is at his computer, and for a split second, there's a picture of Carly taped to his computer monitor, and it just says "Love Carly" on it. That's all it says. There's no other callback. It's like, oh, that brings tears to my eyes just thinking about it again.
Yeah.
But, and then my personal favorite is one you'd come up with that I swear we'll talk about that too. Age of Apocalypse.
Okay, yeah. One Man's Worth is a real favorite, and it's because we did 76 stories, and probably a dozen of them just came out. Just the idea came out just right from the beginning. And it's, oh man, we know this is going to be great from the beginning. Other ones were a lot more work. Some of them didn't end up working out so well. But this one just was full blown in our end, because we thought, why did the X-Men exist? And what would the world be like without them? Mm-hmm. And so why do they exist? They exist because of Charles. What would happen if Charles Xavier was killed when he's 20? And there were no X-Men, and the world evolved as it evolved, and he wasn't out around there to do what it is that the X-Men do. It gets us
choked up a
little bit. And it starts out with a great thing, which there's a reference in the books, and there's a reference in the Star Trek episode, which, City on the Edge of Forever, and then the Jimmy Stewart movie.
Oh, It's a Wonderful Life.
Wonderful Life. Just what difference does one man
make
to the world? And that's when it starts off with Wolverine and Storm being married.
Come on, Storm. Don't you leave me.
Wolverine, do not worry. You are stuck with me a little longer.
Oh, you know it, darling.
In this alternate universe.
This alternate future, which has come about. It's a miserable future. It's come about because Charles has been killed, yet they're going to go back and fix it, but they're not going to be together anymore.
Or they may not be together anymore. They're willing to risk the one thing that's good, the one thing that's perfect in their lives, which is their love for each other, to go back and do what's right for the world. And that kills me.
What now? With him alive, we ain't even supposed to exist.
I don't know. Why are we still here?
As long as your armbands are on you and functioning, you'll both exist outside of time.
How long?
Sorry. The charge only lasts a couple of days.
It was good, darling.
It was the best, tough guy. I love you, Logan.
Don't you leave me.
It kills me because it's like, oh my God, it was season 4, I think.
Yeah.
And going, oh my God, Storm and Wolverine, they're the perfect couple. I hadn't seen that before until in this episode, in this 2-parter, and you go, my God, they're perfect together. Why don't they see it now? Why don't they know that?
What was that?
Beats me. You think we could just attract ants like normal people? Thanks for the tumble, Storm. We ought to wrestle more often.
Now, Logan, some women might think that you were flirting.
Lucky you know me better than that.
We will never know.
It takes great writers who feel such empathy as you do to project that empathy and bring it on to us. And growing up, I think being rooting for the X-Men, you almost feel like a better person because you really see that you don't have to be a mustache twirling supervillain to be a villain. I think the worst villains the show ever had was probably the Friends of Humanity.
No more mutants! No more mutants.
Well, when you're looking at the first, I keep saying the first 13, but again, that was we only knew there were going to be 13. We didn't know what would happen beyond that. Mm-hmm. You and Mark made the conscious decision to what villains do you pick to play off of in these first 13. And you got pushback, I believe, from Marvel headquarters that, well, you need to have like the big guns. You need to fight the big bad mutants. But you guys are like, well, no, if we put them up against the Sentinels and against the groups like Friends of Humanity, but still show them the X-Men struggling to be on humanity's side in spite of the grief they're getting from everyone around them, that made for a much more compelling backstory for these characters. Yeah, we liked much more solid foundation.
Yeah, we liked it. I mean, there are a lot of episodes where there really isn't a villain, like the Proteus episode. They have a problem. They have a really scary problem to solve, but it's this teenager. It's not his fault that he's rampaging. And other people like the Magneto-Charles relationship, I mean, that's really crucial that we understand that Magneto's not evil. He just has a different answer for this problem.
Mm-hmm. Fool, you still dream of peace with those who would destroy all mutants? Is this your answer? This horror? After all the suffering we both have seen, you wish me to wage war on 6 billion humans? When I was a child, my people talked while others prepared for war. They used reason while others used tanks, and they were destroyed for their trouble. I won't stand by and watch it happen again.
That makes it so the actor can play it. That makes it so the writers can write for him. And it makes it just a much more satisfying. And look, they use it in the movies all the time because it works so well to have those two being equals yet adversaries.
This is not how I wanted it to end. I wish it could have been otherwise. You were the best of us.
From a writing standpoint, how did you go picking these classic X-Men storylines? Because there's so many you could have picked from. How did you choose the ones you did?
Well, the first season, we were talking to Will Mineo and Larry Houston, all the people that knew the X-Men best, and we all agreed pretty early on that the Sentinel thing worked great specifically for animation, because first of all, we can't show Wolverine slashing the hell out of people.
My arm!
He was always like, I'm going to.
Don't make me. If you notice that nobody ever gets skewered with his claws. I mean, it's just we weren't allowed to. So there was something that we could have big action and showcase everybody's powers with. But the other thing is that they seemed like a perfect visual metaphor in animation for human beings' attempts to oppress mutants.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically there are these 50-foot weapons that these misguided, villainous people have sent out to control and kill mutants. And I think it made the idea of the struggle for mutant acceptance, it made it really visual. Whereas if you'd had them fight, say, 13 different evil mutants during the first 13 episodes, then it just would have been kind of, WWE. It would have been, okay, mutants fight each other. They have different powers. Sometimes they win, sometimes they don't quite win, but there's no mutant human story being told there. It's just, let's watch the mutants fight. I mean, a lot of the stories what we do is we come up with an original idea for a story like One Man's Worth and just think, okay, then we would go to reference books and say, what little bits and pieces from various books, or even just what characters can we use to flesh the story out? As far as absolutely direct adaptations, there was Days of Future Past and The Two Phoenixes. And then a couple of the writers did some of the stuff like the asteroid M1 was a pretty close adaptation, and the one with the Phalanx was pretty close. But we started it out with just what's the most intense rogue story you can think of. And if a writer came up with something that wasn't in the books, we'd run with that. If they came up with something that was in the books, we would run with that. And so we never, except for those three that we talked to Marvel about, except for Future Past and The Two Phoenixes, we never talked about specifically adapting a specific book. We just were using it as reference material.
You're mentioning using certain characters. I think before Infinity War and all these other shows, and even Spider-Man that would do this later on with the crossover episode, X-Men the Animated Series was the absolute kings of the 5-second cameo, because you had Deadpool in there, you had Deadpool, you had Spider-Man, you had the Hulk, you had all these characters that, unless you're paying attention, are on the screen for about 5 seconds. But to a kid in the 90s, that's enough,
Yeah. Well, that was Larry and the artists. They loved doing that because, and he'll tell you, it started with, there was Slave Island.
Yeah.
When they're down, and we thought, we need this whole island full of mutants. And on the writer side, we didn't know who to call out, and we didn't have the rights to use most of those cameos.
Really?
Those were mostly done illegally by the art staff. And what would happen would be, we would write mutants 1, 2, 3, 4, and he would tell the artist, make this one Blob, make this one Sunfire, make this one. Yeah, he would choose them and put them in there at either as background or as a guest mutant. And at first, the lawyers told him not to. He tried to write Spider-Man in just a little brief, like his Spider-Man's hand comes in the web, and they said, no, we don't have the rights. So the next time he just said, mutant hand comes into frame, web comes out. And since the storyboards were black and white, he didn't call him Spider-Man.
Right.
Or Norseman stands with hammer on top of a building. Mm-hmm. He didn't call him Thor, and it all got through because the people reviewing it didn't see a copyrighted name.
I noticed that Iron Man, you couldn't tell if he was Iron Man or War Machine because they use a certain color. I'm like, that makes sense now. That totally makes sense. And Deadpool, you could barely tell it's Deadpool, but it's him. Yeah. I rewound it 3 times and took a photo. Yeah.
It's a pretty buff Deadpool, I'll say.
But Deadpool is very new at that point.
Brand new. That was
brand
his first appearance in anything.
In fact, we had after the second season it became a hit, we finally had a trip to New York and sat down with them. I did. sat down and laid out and talked about season 3, 4, and 5. Because the first 2 seasons have been cool. We've been in LA, they've been in New York. We went and had 3 days and we talked about it. And that's where we decided we're going to do the 2 Phoenix sagas. And okay, cool. And I looked back at my folder when I was writing the book about that trip. And right in the middle of the folder, there are the first 2 Deadpool issues. Because he'd just come out. And that's why Larry used, cool looking new Marvel character. I'll put him in Xavier's Nightmare.
Yeah.
And see if anybody notices.
Wow.
And in fact, there's obviously Doctor Strange in cameo. And watching recently, Larry Houston was watching episodes again, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, I put him in a lot." There's at the wedding, at Jean and Scott's wedding, there is a Doctor Strange in a business suit, and then after Rogue has sucked the juice out of Captain Marvel and people are running through the hallways screaming, there's Doctor Strange in a hospital in a doctor's jacket. I forgot I did that.
Yeah.
So a lot of these things were just him and the artist just truly
having fun.
Okay, so in season 5, I noticed shortly after the crossover with Spider-Man, the animation changed pretty instantaneously.
Yeah, that's one of the struggles about just people to realize it was a kind of a modest, medium budgeted show. Mm-hmm. It always the deadlines were really tight, which was great because there wasn't time for rewriting. But the deadlines were tight. The budgets were under pressure, and one of the partners in producing of it, Haim Saban, his only interest from the first day was to do everything as cheaply as possible, because he didn't have it. Marvel had an interest in the reshowing of the show. Fox had an interest in the reshowing of the show. Saban was just getting a fee per episode, so it didn't matter if the show did brilliantly or not. The budget was the only thing that mattered to him. So from the day one, he was pressuring us to do things cheaper. And it was to the point where there were he would talk to the animators overseas, and we'd get back stuff that was terrible because they were told, the budgets were lower than they really were. Whatever it was, there were 2 or 3 problems along the way. In fact, a couple episodes got showed way out of order because the animation was so terrible. What happened was, for those last 11 episodes, he had bought out Fox Kids, and he was running the show now. And instead of Graz Entertainment, where Larry and everybody were working, running everything, suddenly he wasn't. He let a lot of the art staff go, and he got a cheaper animation house by about 30%. So not only were the people here not the same, but the people overseas weren't the same. And that was just him carving a third out of the budget. And
you got the word that season 4 was the last season. So you were crafting the last chunk of season 4 to be the last season. And then you got the call for an additional 11 episodes, which is not a typical order. It's usually 13 or 26.
Yeah. It's at 60. We're supposed to end at 65. And the Beyond Good and Evil, the big 4-parter, that was supposed to be the end of the series. That was supposed to be the big blowout ending. And it was all set up to where 4 or 5 of the X-Men leave the X-Men at the end of that story, which they don't now. And 4 new people come in. Bishop and Shard and Archangel and Psylocke were all going to join. Mm-hmm. And 5 of the current ones were going to leave. And that's why all those people are in the episode.
Yeah.
And then we got a call. Oh, no, we need to do 11 more with the old cast. So you can't have them leave and you can't have new people. So we had to rewrite that story, but so it is really, everybody notices that.
Yeah.
And the sad part is that 2 or 3 of the stories in the last episode were really, I felt, pretty sharp, and it's hard seeing them animated like that. I don't think the writing had really deteriorated, although there were 2 or 3 of our weaker episodes back then, but the production suffered the last bit.
But I'll say Graduation Day, the episodes the series ends with, it was still a rock solid.
Yeah. That if we hadn't all pushed back at Saban, if Fox and all the artists, if we hadn't pushed back, it would have all looked worse than that from the beginning. Nobody wanted to put up with that. And for 65 episodes, we held fast. But for the last 11, we lost it.
Scott, were I your father, I would tell you that no truer son could ever be. I am proud of you all. My Xmen.
Last episodes are hard when you're wrapping something up, and maneuvering everybody together to, in effect, say goodbye to Charles, and as he goes off, if not to heaven, to Shi'ar, that gets to us too.
Yeah.
Can he ever come back?
Perhaps not in body, my children, but my spirit shall remain among you, where it was always meant to be.
There were so many ways this thing could have fallen apart so many times, and it just somehow everything comes together magically. And I think this is one of those projects where that happened.
In fact, there was a day after we designed everything and we were storyboarding and we're a month and a half in, suddenly we get a call from Marvel saying they can't look like Jim Lee characters. Start from scratch. And we said, wait a minute.
Check out more episodes of You, Me, and YTV on Facebook and YouTube. Sweet one-of-a-kind interviews with PJ Freshfield, PJ Paul, Tarzan Dan, the cast of Student Bodies, the voice acting cast of Sailor Moon, and much, much more. Exclusively on You, Me, and YTV. Season 2.